Hi, I'm Pastor Tim. Here's another grain of Cybersalt for your world today. My brother-in-law is a blaster. Peter is responsible for a crew that goes to solid rock, drills holes in it, fills those holes with explosives, and then blows them up in a controlled fashion as to move the rock exactly where they want it to go, making way for construction projects, logging roads, golf courses, new housing developments. Wherever there's rock in the way, Peter and his crew can drill holes in it, blow it up, and move it out of the way. A few years ago, when Peter was still working in our city, I got the opportunity to go and film a number of the blasts that he set off. It was pretty cool, pretty spectacular. I like to watch stuff blow up or to see stuff be blown up. When I went to see my first blast, something really impressed me, something I didn't expect. I figured I was just going to see one big huge explosion and blow the rock out of the way. But what I turned out seeing was what blasters do everywhere, a series of explosions. Each of those holes, each of those rows of holes that the drillers put in that solid rock, and which later were filled with explosives, they're set off not in one massive explosion, but in a series of little concussions that go along, expertly timed by the blaster himself. The time that takes place between the different explosions can be measured in milliseconds. Now, if I slow down the video of this blast, you'll see some flashes of light. That's the detonation cord going off at the different timed intervals that Peter has calculated that will help the blast to be successful and move the rock. You may also notice that even while some of the delays are still flashing, the earlier ones that have gone off, the ground begins to move as the rock breaks up and heads in the direction that the rock is supposed to go. I have video of a number of blasts that Peter has done, and I'll include a link to a montage of them at the end of this video. It's pretty spectacular. Watching those blasts reminds me of a reality in life that I've noticed in my own life and in other people's lives when they've come to me for counseling. And that is this idea that when the big catastrophe, the big explosion happens in life that brings someone to their knees or brings them looking for help or brings them to an utter point of collapse in their life, hasn't really happened because of one big thing that's happened, but it's really the consequence of a number of things, a number of little consequences, little explosions, if you will, in life, or choices that have led up to that horrible thing happening. David said in Psalm 19 of the servant who wants to follow God, "Who can discern his errors? Forgive my hidden faults. Keep your servant also from willful sins. May they not rule over me. Then will I be blameless, innocent of great transgression." David sees the relationship there between willing sins and being guilty of great transgression. There's a connection there. When he talks about willing sins, he uses the Hebrew word that really talks about presumption. Presumption is when you know what the limit is, you know what you shouldn't be doing, but you presume to just do it anyways because there's really not going to be great consequences. In your own estimation, you think, yeah, I know it's not right, but what's it going to hurt? And in the long run, maybe it's going to benefit me. It's just a small thing. That's what David is talking about when he talks about willing sins. But he understands and sees that if he's not protected from willing sins, delivered from them, if he doesn't avoid those, then they're just going to lead to big explosions, great transgressions. In his book, The Knowledge of the Holy, A.W. Tozer said, "Certain things have been decreed by the free determination of God, and one of these is the law of choice and consequences." J. Kenneth Kimberlin said, "We are free to sin, but not to control sin's consequences." Many a person has wished they could go back to the first little decision that they made, the first time that they decided that they would try drugs. Or the married man, the first time he decided it would be okay to have a lunch date with his secretary because she's such a good listener. Or the person the first time that thought it's okay to forge this form because it's going to help my business out in the long run. All of these little decisions and many others are decisions that have seemingly little consequence of their own right at the beginning. And we think, well, what are the consequences? What could possibly go wrong? But they lead to other things. And as we continue to willfully sin, as we presume that we can get away with living how we want to and there won't be any consequence, eventually it comes to the point in our lives where there is that huge explosion, where there is that big catastrophe, and there's grieving and gnashing of teeth and sorrow. So let's not be presumptuous about the consequences of choosing to sin. Even if it's little, let's remember that it's a series of choices that leads to the huge things that blow up in our lives. The huge things that cause so much pain that's so unnecessary if we would just trust God in His love for us and His plan and watching out for us in giving the instruction how to live, because He doesn't want us to be walking explosions someday. He doesn't want our lives to collapse. He wants to bless us and give us peace and give us the life of blessing and hope that He intended for us all the time in Christ. I hope that thought adds flavor to your world today. God bless you. When Peter was working in our city to make way for construction projects, like a logging road is needed, a new housing development that goes to solid rock, drills hole in it. Now, if I slow down, and being guilty of great transactions, great transgressions. Well, you could be guilty of great transactions too. If you have a lot of money, or you're writing fraudulent checks, stolen someone's identity. Transgressions. Who can discern his errors? Forgive my hidden faults. Oh my goodness, it's the Bible. I read this every Sunday. Connection between the presumptuous things we do and the Hebrew word for willing. I hope that thought. Someone who lives in a glass house just threw a stone at me.